GM fam, today is the last day of January, Friday, January 31st. We sincerely hope that is the best day of the rest of your lives. And it's going to be the best day of ours because we are joined by someone we've been following for a very long time and super excited to get a chance to chat with him. A man who possibly needs no introduction is Patrick Scott of Dynamo DeFi. But all the same, in case anyone is new, Mr. Patrick, could you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, totally. And I'm sure there's many people who wouldn't be familiar with me, but I make I make educational content about DeFi. So I've been doing that for coming up on 4 years now, and I do that on YouTube, where we've got a YouTube with about 55,000 subscribers, focused on both DeFi strategies, DeFi tutorials, as well as a lot of on-chain metrics analytics. I also have a Substack where we produce similar type of information, and then Twitter, which is a lot more fun. Twitter is a lot more just for fun. And I've been doing that for a few years now, and managed to build out this DeFi focused content network. And then I'm also the head of growth for DeFi Llama, which came about because I spend so much time analyzing their dashboard, sharing their dashboards on my channel and newsletter, that I became close with the team, and eventually they asked me if I wanted to join to head up their marketing.
Excellent. That's awesome. I am reality. I'm not quite sure which. Oh, it looks like you're back. Or I'm back.
not sure who it is. My internet, it says it's good. I can close some other things out.
All right. Well, we'll just go forward and see what happens, and you can let us know which of us is. Please do. All right. So a ton of things like I want to talk about. But first off, like you joined, as you mentioned, like kind of hardcore around 2020, 2021. So we both like on DeFi in this like past cycle. Now, for my sake, I'd been like earlier than that. I'm curious, like if you had been following crypto for a long time, or even like got into crypto, or kind of decided to double, triple down.
Yeah, totally. So I first got into it in 2017, like a lot of people, late 2017. But I got in early enough that I saw the ETH and Litecoin that I had bought go up in value, and then crash in value in 2018. And so that was my first exposure to it. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I had, some, like a lot of people back then, had some vague sense of what it was for, but it hadn't really clicked fully. It wasn't really until 2020 that I got into it more hardcore. And at first in 2020, it was literally just buying Bitcoin. I think I bought some ETH too, but it was mostly Bitcoin I was buying in spring of 2020, because around the time that COVID had happened, I had gotten very into like prepping, as a lot of people did. Like I was like, okay, I'm going to stock up on canned food. We saw what was happening with supply chains. In a previous life, I was forecasting food supply chains. And so knew how, like, one thing goes wrong and that percolates down to many other things. And so I started studying, like, resiliency of financial and economic systems, and that led me to Bitcoin. And so I started buying Bitcoin, and then in 2020, with many people, like a lot of other people, I was looking at ways to make money online, and then that led me from Bitcoin to DeFi. And there's something about, I think now, like, I don't want to say now I know better, but like at the time it was like, oh, you can earn 300% APR from some of these things, and that's like, even though I probably actually ended up studying it more than like the average person who tested it out, that was like the hook that got me in. I was like, oh wow, like you can earn yields that are that much better than like the real traditional financial world. And so I got heavy into DeFi in 2020, 2021. So when I started making content, I'd already been using DeFi for a while. I actually first made a video because my dad was trying to do something and I couldn't find a tutorial online. My 55-year-old dad was like, because he had bought some coin. I was like, oh, you can deposit it on. It was actually, he bought AVAX. I was like, oh, well, you can you're leaving money on the table. You can be earning all this yield on it. And at the time, AVAX, it wasn't on Coinbase yet. You had to buy it on, I think the best place in the US was KuCoin. You had to buy it on KuCoin, withdraw it to like their X chain, then do a like cross subnet. It was like very complicated to actually use AVAX DeFi at the time. And I couldn't find a tutorial to send him. So I was like, all right, I'm going to record one and just post it there. Went through a Scrabble dictionary, chose the word dynamo because first off, I thought it was unique enough to be brandable. Second, it began with a D, like DeFi. Third, it ended with an O, like crypto. So I could do Dynamo DeFi or Dynamo Crypto. As like, I always try to think long term. So I thought, I don't know what I'm going to do with this. I might do nothing, but I want to come up with a good name. In retrospect, I probably could have come up with a better name, but that's we're locked into it now. So I posted the video, forgot about it for a few weeks, came back and it had a few hundred views, which to me was a ton at the time. And I was like, oh wow, I think I had I had gained like 7 subscribers. I was like, oh wow, all these strangers, all these 7 people subscribed to me without me having to do anything. So I started posting more videos and gained like 10, 20. Most of these were just tutorials or talking about different DeFi strategies, 10, 20, 100 subscribers. And then just sort of ran with it. Got up to 1,000 subscribers by the October 10th, 2021. I had started doing stuff over the summer, which I benefited from that second bull run a lot because usually the first 1,000 subscribers are like by far the toughest. Hit 5,000 on Christmas Day, 2021. Hit 10,000 on February 1st, 2022. You can tell these were important dates to me because I remember the exact dates. And yeah, and then ended up being able to take it way further than I expected, where especially the past year, the channel, newsletter, everything have grown quite a bit.
Describe this journey, because in a lot of ways mine is similar in a lot of ways in that we got started like publishing stuff at the same time. For my sake, it was like a bit the opposite because I started publishing before I started using crypto because I also saw the 300% yields and it was like, this is amazing. This is too good to be true. So I was like, let me just like start publishing and like researching it intently and putting all my findings in public. And I did that for about 6 months just to like get feedback from people because I figured like if I got a little bit of people talking, then they'd come back to me and be like, no, don't do this. This is a scam. I lost money. But to my surprise, people were like, this is great. I put in millions of dollars in it and I'm actually earning 300% yield or whatever. And I was like, oh, okay. All right. So then I went ahead and put a few like $100 in there. And I was like, this is amazing. I'm going to like stick around. So
that's awesome.
So, and it's been also super interesting to me, like just watching the space evolve over the past 4 years, because I think like you and I probably have similar like habits where it's just like, okay, let's just like kind of release stuff that we find interesting on a fairly steady cadence. And you and I are like regular as clockwork, but crypto has not been regular as clockwork. It has been a complete like carnival for the past 4 years, and it's kind of remarkable that you're still here and still like churning out great stuff.
Yeah, well, nowhere else to go. I'm mostly kidding with that. But yeah, so basically, I actually think that there's like a lot of scenarios if you're looking at like different potential ways the past few years could have gone. There are many scenarios where I didn't stick with crypto. I'm glad I did because it's grown so much. But basically, what happened was in 2022, I had a job offer at like a new fund that was launching. So I left my old job this first week of May. GM, I see DeFi advisor in the chat, but I left my old job the first week of May 2022. And then the Terra happened. People might remember UST collapsed the week later. So the main lead investor in the fund pulled out. And so I wasn't, they weren't able to launch. So like I left, I was like, all right, they've got a few weeks until they're calling capital. I'm going to take like a month or two off. And then yeah. And so that's then basically it didn't happen. So I was like, ended up with no job. No one was hiring. I applied for a bunch of jobs in crypto at the time. I had the newsletter. I had the YouTube channel, which had like 10 or 15,000 subscribers. So it wasn't small, but also like was not big enough to make a living. Yeah. And so then I was like, okay, well, I'm going to figure this out. And so ended up just publicly posting my analysis every day, maybe 5, 6, 7 times a day. I would post my analysis of different charts, different like charts being on-chain metrics, stuff like that, and just started. Twitter started growing, YouTube kept growing, was able to eventually turn it into a business.
So what would you say are the like core values that got you into crypto in the first place? Because I've noticed there's like a few different segments in this space, I'll call it. Like there's kind of the sovereign individuals who like, you mentioned being a bit of a prepper in 2020. If you were in like if you're a sovereign individual, then you might be attracted to crypto for the idea that like it's going to give you censorship resistance and self-sovereignty and decentralization. And then there's like other crowds within crypto. There's some are like literally just here for the gains, like economic opportunists, let's call them. They're like extremely interested in whatever token is going to like make the next 10x and have like a 1 week time horizon. There's a lot of people that are actually like in it for the technology. They don't just say that; they actually like live it. And I feel like you might fall a bit into that camp because you do all these very good technical tutorials. As well as there's like people who like are legitimately here because they believe in its mission of kind of like creating this global access and helping break down borders. And it might be that you fall into multiple of those camps, but I'm curious if there's like particular values that you identify with strongly within crypto and DeFi.
Yeah, I definitely fall into a couple of the camps. So I gave you guys the abridged version of my journey, how I ended up in crypto. But another part of it is when I was in this previous life doing corporate finance, forecasting these supply chains, like realizing how fragile everything was made me like this was back probably 2017. Had this revelation that was like, okay, y there would be a lot of benefits if you could rebuild the world in a way that was decentralized. And this was pre really knowing anything significant about crypto. It wasn't until 2020 that it clicked for me that okay, crypto, Bitcoin, DeFi are actually the ways that you can rebuild the financial portion of that in a way that's decentralized, more resilient, less less prone to shocks and choke points and all those sorts of things. So that's one angle that I came at it with. There is also the I wouldn't consider myself a quote sovereign individual. I'm not doing the digital nomad lifestyle. I live in a single place here in the United States, but I've always had a libertarian leaning. I was just looking at it recently because this has been like, because of news cycles, like I have a signed copy of Ron Paul's book that I bought when I was 14 with like whatever like money I had saved up. I don't even remember. I don't know why I bought it. Like I read it and I was like, I got to get the signed copy of this. Um,
That's me. I was just asking DeFi
oh,
advisor
okay.
to give me a sound check, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I was just reading the comment. Yeah. So that was like one angle I came with it. I always had that leaning, like literally since I was 13 or 14 years old. And then there's the money aspect as well. I think it would be an interesting hobby to be in, but it would be tougher to justify trying to actually like go all in on it if there wasn't also the opportunity. And the way I look at it, like if you went back in time to the 90s, you know to me it would be crazy to not do something on the internet at the time, knowing what we know now. Knowing what we know now, it'd be crazy to not, unless like you had I'm sure there's other industries, but basically it'd be crazy to not do something in tech. Come forward to today, to me it's got to be, I would say now, crypto. There's maybe a few others like AI or space type things, but like say it's got to be crypto or AI. AI, if you want to, like what would people in 10 years say you were crazy to not be doing at this time?
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, and I actually think that I mean I'm if I didn't end up in crypto, I'd probably be doing AI something or other at this point. But that being said, I still think that the barriers for getting into crypto are a lot lower than the barriers for getting into AI. So I'd probably just end up in AI because like. I think one of the things that like a lot of people in the space have in common is that there's a lot of people who like think outside the box. Um, so I feel like I probably would end up like getting pushed outside if I was trying to be in some kind of like normal job. I don't know. I don't know. You cut it inside a normal job though. You had a corporate finance job. You said for a bit. What's your
I,
take
I
on?
I did, but I didn't like it. What were you saying?
Well, I was just curious if you could maintain contact with any people there, because a few days ago I went to a meetup here. Like it happens like pretty frequently. It's a lot of like startup people, so all like super bright, but it's like not strictly tech startup people. So you get like a lot of like people who are like invested in property or like old school finance type startups, just basically like small business owners. And I go periodically knowing that like it's like always a smart crowd, but you never know what you're going to get, and just kind of like survey them on crypto, like to try and get a sense of outside the bubble we're in, like where do the like smart savages who see the opportunities, like what are they seeing? And like they're still fairly lukewarm on crypto is what I noticed. So I'm curious, like if that's what mapping to like when you talk to any of your old comrades, are they like for a long time in Bitcoin, there's like the blockchain, not Bitcoin crowd within corporate finance. There was all these kind of like, oh, we hate it. But now that like Wall Street might be embracing it, like, are you getting the sign that there's being like a 180 in terms of perception?
Yeah. So first off, to clarify, I wasn't on Wall Street. But I do have many old classmates from school who are on Wall Street, so I can speak to that a bit as well. So first thing I would say is it's definitely a generational thing where like I've had multiple people I discovered who I knew either from back in school who were working in finance, or who were from the corporation I worked at, who were like young, like the kind of prototypical crypto investor, like 25-year-old guys who I discovered were watching my channel and were like, like avid crypto users, traders, whatever you want to call it, smart people who have other things going on. So I think it's a generational thing, and I think that one thing that you're probably already seeing, but you're going to see, is that as those people move up, they get more responsibility in the organizations they're at. Then you're going to see a lot of those organizations naturally move forward to crypto. I will say though, in general, people I know either who are in like Web 2 world or finance, definitely most of them have a pretty negative perception of crypto. I will say, I actually, funny enough, I had someone who's a Wall Street guy reach out for the first time about crypto a couple weeks ago, and you want to guess what it was about that he wanted to ask about?
I'll guess meme coins, because I had someone
Meme
random
coin,
reach
yeah,
out to me about meme coins too.
about one particular meme coin, yeah.
Melania or Trump?
Trump, yeah, he reached out to ask about that. And so that's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if he was on board or not, but yeah. So I feel like in general, they tend to have a mostly negative opinion. But I think increasingly what I have seen is the past year, especially, a lot of those people, especially if they're in the like, especially on the finance side, they're realizing they have to understand it, if that makes sense.
Okay, so
And especially that's true, I'll say. Actually, I'm just thinking back of like people who have reached out about it, or when like at alumni events, people I talk to, people who are in quantitative trading, I've noticed, are like very interested, probably because there's money to be made, right? Like
yeah,
people who are in like, things that are maybe more like divorced from providing real value to the economy already are, they're interested in crypto because money is money to them.
yeah. At the end of the day, like yields remain the killer app in crypto, and no matter what else happens, like the money talks, and it's going to get people here, even if they don't care about the tech or don't care about anything else. So I get it. How about your classmates at Harvard? Because I went to grad school across the street from you. Actually, I went to undergrad in Pennsylvania. So I think you're a Pennsylvania maximalist, which is why I bring that up.
Yeah, I grew up here, and I live here now as well. But yes,
right. But surprisingly, like MIT, for being, which is where I went to grad school, like for being like a ton of really technical minds and super smart people, and there's like a lot of like amazing people within the crypto community that came out of that. The school itself is like fairly like not good on crypto in a lot of ways, as evidenced by, like, if nothing else, the fact that they just onboarded Gensler as professor there, which I think there's been some pushback on from several MIT alums on that. At least I hope there's going to be some pushback. But like I've also noticed, like I bumped into like a lot of notable people who like just super embraced crypto, who came from across the who just basically came from Harvard. Like So I'm thinking like, okay, like I don't have a good sense, but maybe you do. Like, are a lot of your fellow alum like really embracing crypto? Does Harvard have a pretty good crypto scene?
That's a good question. I will say I know a good amount. Like you would be surprised because there's this perception that, um, well, there's probably an accurate perception that like at the top you had a lot of Harvard MBAs or Harvard alum who in 2021 who like decided they were suddenly going to become crypto guys. But the ones that stuck around like are a lot of them are like still pretty in the weeds, and I think people would be surprised like how many anons on Twitter came from institutions like that. And the great thing is they don't you don't even need to know that they did, right? It's so much of crypto is merit based. Um, I would say
100%.
like most people you go talk to the average person from Harvard, they're not going to be that interested in crypto, but there's a pretty strong scene. Like I you know not infrequently have like introductions or people I encounter in the industry who either I knew from school or who were fellow alums. And I think it's some of it's tech. Like I do know some people who were I had a friend who was getting a comp sci PhD and dropped out to start a DeFi protocol. He did that I think in 2020, so worked out quite well for him. But it's mostly people who are on like the finance business side of things who maybe like found that Wall Street was a little bit too straight laced. I think that's a big part of it. Also, of people who Harvard tends to skew a certain way politically. Of people who weren't in lockstep with that, I would say like a non-trivial proportion of them now work in crypto in some form.
Got it. So it sounds kind of similar where it's like there's a lot of just people who are there because they're like smart and talented and interested in money. But the school itself maybe is like a little bit behind. One of my favorite stories is that the MIT Bitcoin Club, I think it was 2017, they gave every MIT student access to I think $100 worth of Bitcoin because they want to get more like students involved. And basically like people 2/3 of the student body or so couldn't figure out how to unlock the wallet. So it just like the money never went
That
anywhere.
is crazy. Yeah, that is crazy. I think there is some scene. Because I had a friend who was at the business school who was running this like Harvard blockchain club, but I don't know. I don't know how like how active that still is because he graduated. I have another friend actually who convinced a professor to launch a decentralized AI initiative at Harvard. So that's going on. Which university though, if we're talking about top universities, is very forward is actually Cambridge in England.
Oh, interesting.
They have a whole digital assets program, and they have some really incredible dashboards that they've made that are as far as I can tell unique. So for example, they worked with Chainalysis to build a map showing stablecoin remittances, like with flows between different countries. They built that, and then they also built this DeFi encyclopedia type thing that brings sources from both DeFi Llama as well as other places to consolidate a bunch of information about different projects, including, for example, I think they look at things like Gini coefficient of their governance token to try to assess how decentralized it is. So Cambridge University actually has they're doing a lot of actually really good work in terms of digital assets.
Interesting. I wouldn't be surprised if like we start to see like some universities that were previously like considered like second tier kind of vaultily embrace crypto in a way. So yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. Speaking of places that have incredible dashboards, let's talk about DeFi Llama and your work with them, because I think it's like been about less than a year since you joined up with them, right?
It's been less than 2 months.
Less than 2 months. So yeah, a year in crypto time, but less than 2 months in. I'm curious what your interactions with the team have been because I think I think I speak for pretty much everyone who is like in this space. Maybe not the meme coin people, but like the like quality of information and the ability to actually just like have like dialogues about like what tokens are like what protocols are doing in the space has just benefited so tremendously from the existence of DeFi Llama. Because before it, there's like just debates about like people didn't know what the TVL of certain like a certain protocol was because they would go to 5 different dashboards and get 5 different sources, and all of a sudden like DeFi Llama like just came along with a very transparent way of listing your project and getting kind of like a neutral, authoritative source of data. And as a result, we can like make apples to apples comparisons about all these different things. So, I mean, DeFi Llama is incredible. As head of growth there, like, what are you seeing as kind of opportunities for where DeFi Llama can go?
Yeah, so the big thing that the teams put a lot of work into, and that we're still building out, is DeFi Llama has been the place for TVL for probably, I don't know exactly when they flipped DeFi Pulse, but for a large amount of time now, 3+ years, 3 to 4 years, has been building building as robust data for other metrics. So fees and revenue being the first one, because a lot of people are starting to look at that more, since TVL is very valuable in many ways, because you can compare apples to apples across different protocols by how much money is deposited. The problem is that different TVL has different productivity on different apps. And now you have apps, for example, like Telegram bots that sometimes have a lot of revenue, but they have no TVL. So how do you measure that, right? Like, you have to measure that some way, because they're making money and are successful on-chain businesses, but TVL is not the right way. So they built out a lot of new dashboards for fees and revenue. And so that's been one initiative, and that's a huge area of growth. Other things that they see as opportunities, or that we see as opportunities, one is, so that is protocols by fees and revenue. They've also added a thing recently called app revenue, which is a metric to assess chains based on how much revenue in cumulative all the apps on that chain are making. Some other opportunities are they've built out a dashboard for ETF data. So for better or worse, that's an important thing people are tracking now. 404. What's
You
that?
did plural. I just needed
okay.
plural on it. We're
Okay,
good.
Yeah. So if you go over to the right on this chains page, you can see 24-hour app revenue. I think the spreadsheet, you might need to scroll over to the right.
So it's Binance Smart Chain is the winner for the
that
past 24 hours, followed by Solana.
interesting? Volume.
Oh, that's volume. That's volume. My mistake.
App revenue.
App revenue. Solana's number one, 16 million. Wow. Followed by Ethereum, 2 million, Base 1.5, Hyperliquid 1.48.
Yeah, and so what's really interesting about this, I think, is if you look at the top chains by TVL, again, there is value in that, but one thing you always notice is there's some chains there where it's like, oh, that's weird. Like, I never hear anyone talk about that. And if you look at it by revenue, then to me, it's much more in line with, you'd say, where are people actually doing things like actively on chain, like where making transactions today. And I'd probably be like, yeah, Solana, Ethereum, Base, Hyperliquid, Arbitrum is probably where most activity is happening. And those are not the top 5 if you look at it by TVL. So app revenue has been an important one. Still, this is recent as of the past week or two. So people are still figuring out how they want to use it, including me. There are some signs that it could be as a better top signal than a leading metric, but still figuring that out, and I think that's pretty powerful. Some other things the teams has built out. They've built out a really strong yield dashboard that I think a lot of people don't know about. Like, in my opinion, the best yield dashboard, where they have, I think, almost 20,000 pools tracked in here, and it's filterable by any dimension.
I've used this occasionally, because it's wild how much detail you can get into it, right? Like, say I'm interested in staking Bitcoin tokens, and I want it to be only on mainnet. Oops, that's osmosis. I did it wrong. But yeah, it's just crazy the amount of detail you can get into. And
and not only that, if you click into any of the pools, you can see the change in APR across time. So people always wonder, like, is this going to sustain? You can actually look in and it will map the APR over time for that particular pool. Yeah, you can filter by value. You can filter to no impermanent loss. You can filter to whether the protocol is audited. So yeah, I think this is probably one of the more underused dashboards on here, because again, it's in my opinion the best free yield database.
Yeah, and it actually solves a problem that I feel like has been like plaguing people since they got into crypto because they look and they see, oh, like this pool is giving me a crazy 70% APY. Well, yes, that's just because they just like
Mhm.
spike the rewards and that's going to come down as soon as everyone gets in. If you look at the past 30-day average, it's
Mhm.
only 2.2%, and there's only $4 million
Yeah,
in there. So
and if you click into any of these, I think that's cool as well. So if you click on the pool, the name. Oh, okay.
okay, I'm not very smart. I pasted the tab in the wrong into the restart.
I figured something. That's okay.
No, I got it open. I'll resume that. So yeah, just like super cool stuff, and I feel like people could actually just like build. They could just build entire like applications on top of this if people aren't going to just go right to DeFi Llama because it's like an open API.
Yeah,
So
they've got a really powerful API. That's actually, I think, part of how I ended up on the team is I built a dashboard before they had app revenue. I had written this article about 6 months ago saying introducing chain GDP, where I was proposing that measuring the GDP of the chain was like a better way to assess it than like transactions, volume, or TVL. And that the chain. My proposal for chain GDP was basically the same. And so I built a custom website that used their APY, not APY, API. We're so used to talking about yields. Use their API to uh, to track the cumulative fees on applications across every different chain. And I think that's part of why my guess is that's part of why I sort of ended up being able to join them. And actually, so they have the free API that's really powerful. They have for people who, if someone really wanted to build like a powerful app, they do have a paid version as well that goes into like hourly detail, which
oh
you can't
wow.
even find on the regular site. Yeah, so for people, it's a couple $100s a month, but for someone who really wanted to build an app, they could build something like that that had hourly detail across every metric.
I have to admit that the free API has been fantastic. I've been building
Mhm.
against it lately because we needed to basically just get some better data collection and tagging with a lot of the articles we've been generating at Leviathan News. And I was like really surprised at how good the API was because I'm used to so many of these APIs in crypto databases like being really bad or like cutting you off after like 5 calls or something, so you can't actually do anything robust out of it. But the like I shouldn't have been surprised, but like just a phenomenal resources with everything at DeFi Llama.
Yeah, no, the team is great, and you asked about working with the team. So, it's interesting. I'm the only doxed one. So I'm the designated face guy. When we,
You're
well,
the
right now
sacrificial lamb, the
I'm
person
the
who they're going
sacrifice.
to
Yeah,
sacrifice the ledger kidnappers, right?
exactly. Yeah. Well, okay. Well, yes. Hopefully not.
I know that freaks me out.
Well, actually, okay. In transparency, I hope I don't give anyone ideas with this. It did freak me out when it occurred to me. I'm like, hey, like, having access to the DeFi Llama Twitter is pretty valuable. Like, because it's not like I have access to any money, in terms of the organization, but like I do have access to their Twitter account. Um, but
Mhm.
which that's not gonna, we're not gonna, the, that's not
No,
gonna.
but the thing is, you lift, so you'll be able to take care of at least 3 or 4 kidnappers if they
Yeah,
come.
I lift. I've got I have a Belgian Malinois which can take out at least one. Um, it's like like a kind of guard type dog. But yeah, no, that is a concern in crypto. I mean, that's something people have to like, it is real. I think some people are a little paranoid about it, but better that than the opposite. And I mean cases where someone is like, you know, like I think in most cases, if you don't have any public profile, you don't have the ton to worry about. It doesn't mean like go around flaunting your wealth, but if you're not flaunting your wealth, you don't have a public profile, you don't have a ton to worry about. But it is a real concern. You hear about stories, you hear about the thing with the ledger, you hear about every year there's a few cases of people who were like some kind of influencer that get kidnapped or robbed or something. Usually it's people who are flaunting wealth in some way, but not always.
Yeah, I mean, my strategy was to like adhere myself to the Curve brand, and since the Curve token's done nothing but go down, no one's gonna be jealous of my money, right?
Yeah, well, that's a good way to do it. And
But
it's
no,
just
I
like
mean,
other. it's something to worry about.
Whatever,
Like I you know this.
we got one life to
I
live.
won't say all
We got to enjoy it.
we got one life to live, and like and the other thing is, well, I never expected my YouTube to get as big as it did. I don't know, what if I would have done things differently if it had. But the other thing is like you do have an advantage if you're speaking on video. It is an advantage to have your face visible. So if you're willing to take that risk, like there is a benefit to it. Also, I feel like increasingly you're seeing more and more founders are becoming docs. Maybe it's the old crypto culture falling by the wayside. It could also be the fact that I think after all the rugs over the past 3 or 4 years, a lot of people want to see, like want to know who's behind a project. And then there's also the fact, I mean, there's things you can do even if you're docs, like there's ways you can, for example, like live somewhere where your name is not tied to the place that you live, and obviously that makes it much more difficult to track you down.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think that it's a huge benefit to the space that it is accessible for people who choose to remain undoxed. And like, I think when I think of like protocols like Convex, I think of services like DeFi Llama that really embrace that and have built like such amazing, powerful like parts of the ecosystem. I think that it's one of the things that makes crypto itself anti-fragile and in a lot of ways like superior. And it also, it welcomes and is room for the people like us who are like cavalier and, Leroy Jenkins our face into public. So anyway, before I mention that, you're talking about the DeFi Llama team and your experience working with them.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So, well, yeah. So no, they're phenomenal. I mean, here's how quickly they ship. I think that's one of the things they're known for is they had reached out to me about taking on the role as heading up their marketing. The title we decided on was quote head of growth. Not quotes. Yeah, that is the title. But I agreed to do it, and then the co-founder NGMI, he's like, all right, like, are you available in 20 minutes for me to onboard you? Like, you know, you know what I mean? He's like, it was basically, can you start right away? He's like, all right, I've got some free time now to onboard you. So that's how fast they move, right? So it was like literally a few hours later, I was not even a few hours later, I was doing stuff. And that was kind of emblematic to me. Like, that's how quickly the team moves. Like sometimes I'll make a suggestion in our internal chat for some change with a dashboard, and it will be like done an hour later.
Yeah, and I definitely remember that because OX and GMI would be like a big fan of building in public. So it's like, especially during the height of DeFi summer, when DeFi Llama was just launching, it would be like, oh, we should have like someone would like just say like randomly on Twitter back then it was called like, oh, we should have a dashboard for blank, and then OX and GMI would be like, okay, yeah, sure. Would you like it in red or blue? And it would be like live within an hour. It's amazing. I'm curious what the like metric for growth looks like, because one of the other things that's been interesting about DeFi Llama is it's not been like the protocol that's like most pursuing making a lot of money. There has been, I believe, a few like revenue sources. I saw that like they were getting some referrals from some of the Llama Swap or whatever the DEX swap aggregator is. I don't know if they're still making money from that, but it's not substantial. I don't believe compared to like DeFi protocol is going to be launching a token and trying to like drive revenues. But to me, it seems like the metric for growth at DeFi Llama is not strictly money. It's more like users or information. I don't know. What you tell me? What are they optimizing for?
Users is what we're optimizing for at the moment. Yeah, users would be the main thing. I mean, a lot of it is the goal is to create the best source of fundamentals that's do as best the job they can to be transparent and unbiased. And that's something that I've definitely seen, like even, talking to the team is like, I have no idea, for example, like which chains, protocols people actually like, what their stakeholders in, like even on the internal chats, because it's all about just trying to have transparent methodology and sort of even, like even-handed metrics for all protocols. And so that's a big thing that I would say is like the ethos that drives it, and then the metric, the KPI right now is users.
I mean, when you have users as your metric, I feel like the incentives are aligned just so much different than when revenue is the metric. Because at the end of the day, you care about like user experience in a way that like protocols that just care about revenue might not necessarily care about. Like if the protocol cares about revenue, it's going to be focusing on the top 20%, really the top 1% of wealthy whales, to the exclusion of 99% of the people actually using the protocol. So I think that is one of the reasons that you are able to build such a powerful service there.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, they ship fast. I did an interview with NGMI on my channel a few months ago, and he talked about that like, the thing that differentiated them was being really fast with listing things, with adding new features, all that sort of thing. And then yeah, I think there's the laser focus on user experience for multiple years has also been a huge part of why they've been successful. I'm new, I'm still, I guess I'm kind of insider now, but like I'm still basically an outsider. I'm just I've only been on the team for a little over a month.
One thing I
Yeah.
don't know if people know about is how easy it is to actually get new protocols on, by just kind of creating your own DeFi Llama adapter and filing a pull request. Is that something you can talk about?
Not some. I'm not the best person to talk about that, but yeah, basically the way that most protocols are listed is, people will be like, how can I get listed? And as a protocol, you can do it yourself with the DeFi Llama adapter on GitHub, like you're showing there. And yeah, I'm not the best person to talk about in detail, like what that looks like, because I've never done one, but yeah, it's pretty straightforward. The only things that are a little bit more in depth would be anything related to listing RWAs on there, because usually those are not verified on chain. But the thing is, because it's on chain, if a protocol, they built the adapter and they include the smart contracts where TVL is, like that can all be verified easily. And so one of the beauties of blockchain and beauties of open source project.
Yeah. Do you think that like the meme coin community, if they get wind of this, is going to start like listing a bunch more meme coin projects on there, like the kind of meme coin mania?
Yeah. So as far as DeFi Llama, I don't think so, because in most cases there's no TVL to list. Like you could, build an adapter for some smart contract, but there's not going to be any TVL. So I don't know
Divide by
why they
zero
bother.
here.
Divide by zero. Yeah, exactly. My take on meme coins is, so we'll say good, bad, and ugly. Good. It's a good stress test for the networks,
Yeah. And the
right?
downside is if you're focused on users though, like that's where a lot of the users are. So
Yeah.
you might say the perverse incentive, if you're trying to maximize users, is let's get these like hordes of people flonging to like buy Trump and Melania coins.
Yeah. So the good thing is it's a good stress test for the network. Other good thing is that it is bringing new people on chain for the first time. Bad is, I think it does distorts incentives. Like you said, it distorts incentives for a lot of people in the space, because say you're a crypto founder and you have this great idea for a protocol that's gonna, say, let people, like gonna make stable coins like a better way to do peer-to-peer payments in the developing world. Great. You can build that and make the world a better place. Or you can, for much less effort, launch a meme coin and make more money. It really distorts incentives. And you can make the money faster. You can make it in this year instead of it when you sell the company in 5 years. So it really distorts incentives. And I think I have a controversial opinion that this is not just related to meme coins this year, but the way that the space played out, first with the ICO boom and then with 2020 and 2021, by having so many tokens be liquid right away, I think actually probably set back real adoption by a few years, because you had like these incredible builders who were basically all able to retire. In many cases, not really even because of any malicious reason, right? They were able to retire. So what's your incentive? In the normal world, you keep building your company until it gets acquired, or in rare cases IPOs, or it goes bankrupt, right? Or shuts down for other reasons. But not in the case of in the crypto, they build it and then they cash out from the token, and then what's their incentive? So that's the bad part of it. And then the ugly is also just meme coins are like basically adjacent to gambling, and then if you look at the live streams that were associated, for example, with Pump.Fun, it leads to a lot of I would consider to be unsavory behavior as well.
Yeah, it's true. And it's weird because I was actually talking with a few people who kind of confessed privately that they feel like they don't like the meme coin mania. They just feel like they aren't allowed to like say it because it's like not sort of like politically correct in our space because they were like fundraising at the time, and a lot of VCs are like, let's go where the money is. So like it was kind of like if you're out there publicly trashing meme coins, like you're undercutting their bags. So they felt like they couldn't actually talk about it in public, but in private, we're like, this is a disaster for our space.
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't care, so I could say whatever I want. So I think it's a disaster for our space.
Yeah, I think it's especially the longer it lasts, I think it's not great, and for a lot of the reasons we talked about, it also hurts the public perception of it in a lot of people's minds. Um, Now the weird thing is now you do have, for example, like people who I would be surprised who are Web2 founders who are talking about launching meme coins, and I don't know what to think about that because that okay, this is them exploring crypto, or is that this is what they view crypto basically as like a joke where they can make a quick buck, and I don't know the answer to that.
I mean, I think part of it is the phenomenon you just described, which is that like if you're a Web2 founder, like life is a lot tougher. Like if you're a Web2 founder, like you say, you do have to wait till IPO. Like you're going to be hungry and you're going to be starving and sleeping in your friend's couch and launching out of a garage for many years before you ever see any taste of return, if you ever do. So like it's actually incredibly favorable, even if you don't want to go the meme coin route. There's a lot of better ways of funding, in my opinion, and launching a startup, even a Web2 startup on chain. And I think that people are gravitating to meme coins because that has all the attention. But I actually think that if you're just like savvy about like yield farming and stuff like that, you could actually like launch launch a Web2 project with some kind of tokenomics built in and have a friendlier founder experience than you would have if you went to all these various like hoops you have to jump through in Silicon Valley. So I get why Web2 founders are starting to trickle in.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely part of it. And I mean, maybe we will see a case where, especially with regulatory clarity, people can raise capital for their businesses through some sort of token launch, and yeah, it could be good. Although I will say, you know, look at different perspectives. If I was investing in a company, I would way rather the founder. Might get offended by this, but I'd way rather the founder not be liquid right away, right? Like no
Yeah,
offense, but like, well, if other people are investing, why should you be liquid before you've actually like built the business? That's not
yeah.
really how that
And
works.
I hope the pendulum swings back in that direction though, because it's possible to architect your startup that encodes that, right? Like you could
Uh-huh,
actually like say
100%.
like this founders are going to commit to having their tokens locked, and a lot do, and I think it's a like signal of confidence. Um,
Yeah, and you have vesting periods. One thing I've seen a few projects do that is, I see why founders don't want to do this, but I thought this was good confidence, was basically that their tokens don't become liquid unless certain TVL metrics are hit. So meaning, okay, so you wait 2 years, it still hasn't taken off. There's no cash out. um, and I see why someone would be hesitant to do that because maybe you feel like you deserve a cash out. But to me, setups like that do bring a little more confidence in it that the incentives are going to be aligned. That you can't just wait out the vesting period.
Yeah. Although I think if you're doing that, you probably also want to structure it where the VCs have to wait as well. Because I think one of the other issues we see in the space is that VCs actually really prefer having their equity stake not have to wait until IPO to cash out, and they really like getting insider tokens they can dump before the public launch. So
100%.
it's yeah, there's a lot that can be done, and I actually in some way like the silver lining of the meme coin phenomenon is that it seems like it's like moving all of the meme coin activity mostly to Solana. I know that like Base is still like really big for meme coins and they exist everywhere. But on some level, if we can segregate that activity and have Solana become the meme coin chain, then maybe we can make Ethereum and other like L2s the DeFi chains again, and like start to bring like the legitimate activity, quote unquote legitimate activity there.
It could be. Yeah, I think the big challenge with that is going to be twofold. One is you have all these new people who are onboarding to meme coins, and a lot of them would never be DeFi users in the sense of like, what you might call like real DeFi. But some subset of them are, and they're now on board to Solana first. And I think so now you've seen like RateX and some more serious DeFi protocols have been able to have successful launches on Solana. The other challenge you're going to run into is, for better or worse, most economic activity in crypto today is driven by speculation. And so if you're building something and you want it to make money, you kind of need speculators.
Yeah. And to some extent, this is one of the reasons behind DeFi Llama's choice to focus on users, not revenue, right?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, again, I'm relatively new. I don't know the exact background of that. I know that like revenue is something on the team's radar. It's a small team as well. I should say, like I actually don't know the exact number of people, but it's like, it's like like people would be surprised for how big and extensive a website is. People would be very surprised how small of a team it is. Like, yeah, I don't know exactly, but like my impression is I think it's less than 10 people.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And I know that you're new and you might not have access to know all about this, but like, what does the kind of like revenue or like funding situation for DeFi Llama look like, right? Like, I mean, I don't want it to disappear. I want it to stick around. Is it going to be stable for 10 years, 20 years? Like, how long can we expect it to stick around with its kind of like current operations?
I will say for the foreseeable future, but I cannot share any more information on that publicly.
Okay, fair enough. Because I remember there was some kerfuffle a few years ago where they're thinking about launching a token, and some people on the team objected because they didn't want to launch a token. So I'm guessing no airdrop.
I can't comment on that.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Cool. Let's move to something, some other stuff that you can comment on then. Our good friend Rec Diomedes has been doing really amazing, this really amazing trend where each week he does a full Achilles. And he's done one in honor of you. He's done one in honor of me. You've actually returned the favor. I'm still working on it, but I can't for various reasons. Part of which is the weather here. Part of which is while trading for it, like I ripped apart my hip trying to do it.
Ouch.
I shouldn't say I ripped it apart my hip, but it's like intense. For people who don't know, this is basically a first of all, you do 70 weighted pull-ups with a 70-pound vest on. Then you do a 1.5 or 2 mile walk while continuing to wear the 70-pound vest and carrying a 70-pound dumbbell in each hand. And he does this in like a record, like what, 3 hours? Is it like his time or something like that?
Yeah, it is insane. I will say I did one. I had done training. I do a lot of weighted pull-ups. I stay active. It was without a doubt one of the hardest, most painful physical things I've ever done.
What was your time on that?
I don't even remember, but not as good as his. I want to say it was like 4 hours. And here's the thing. It was going really fast at first. Like I did the pull-ups in like 30 minutes or something, 30, 40 minutes. The walking though. So the problem is it's 2 miles with a 70-pound vest plus 70 pounds in each hand. And like after a while, like things start to break that you don't realize could break. Like, a big thing I ran into is like the skin was starting to rip off my hands. So I was doing it at this strongman gym. And so they wrapped some, wrapped things around my hands just so I could finish off the few hours without like the skin ripping off. And even then I think I was bleeding a little bit at one point. So like stuff like that starts to break, or like muscles that you don't know exist start to get tired, like the stabilizer muscles in your ankles and hips and everything. So it was honestly really tough, but built character. It was good.
Yeah.
Funny. After I posted about it, some guy posted, he's like, "Oh, I'm going to be in New York next week. Take the train up and we'll do one together." I was like, "Yeah, like maybe in a year. I don't really want to do one of these the next week."
I was initially targeting February to do mine. I think I've got to push it back to March, but I'm super excited to get to do it. You're right. Like I thought the pull-ups is gonna be the tough part, but I'm close enough to the pull-ups. It's really is just that like the walking is like way tougher than I could have imagined.
Yeah, well, the thing with the pull-ups was like if you can do one or two, with the 70 pounds.
You can get there.
You can get there because you do one, you wait, you do walk a little, then you like do another one, and you get there. But the walking was the part where I was like, legitimately, it was just, there was a point where I was like, all right, I just got to get deep in my head, and like it's going to be painful.
But the kind of larger, broader question I wanted to ask related to this is, like, as I mentioned at the beginning, that you've been like really regular about knocking out content for the past 4 years, despite how grueling the bear market is. Recti Media has also been like producing amazing stuff. And it kind of occurs to me that there's a lot of people, there seems to be a very high correlation between just people who like use the gym a lot and like are able to like churn through the bear market and like knock out amazing stuff, whether like the markets are terrible or the markets are great. So I always tell people, like, if it's a bear market and you're like not satisfied, just hit the gym. Like, do you think that this is like a fair hypothesis? Patrick Collins is another person that pops to mind, like with Sifrin. Like he, between like doing amazing audits and amazing educational material, like just does like amazing lifting stuff. Like,
yeah, I think it comes to understanding that if you do the work now, you'll get results later, and that you might have to do the work over a long period of time. So if you're lifting, you're starting out for the first time, or you're starting some new exercise, you might have to start off with a low baseline, and it might take a year or 2 years before you build up to where you want to go. But if you do progressive overloading and train that muscle group a couple times a week, that you're going to get better, right? It's like a tried and true process. And if you apply that same mentality to either content or another business or some other sort of operation you were building during a bear market, as long as you think things are going to return eventually, then for me, like during the bear market, it was okay, well, people don't really want DeFi content right now, but every week I'm going to make 3 videos, and I'm going to make videos that will be relevant in a year. So, some of them, for example, I made videos on tutorials on like how to make a Phantom wallet, 2023. No one watched it initially. Now, even today, like it still gets probably 100 to 200 views a day, because that's the main wallet for Solana. And I made like tutorials like that with many different chains and wallets. Just so happened that Solana was the one that became popular. But if you have that expectation that eventually it's going to pay off, then you can mentally bear with churning out that content every single week, even when other people aren't interested in it.
What's your take on the different, because you do a few different platforms, right? You have Substack, you have YouTube, and then you're doing like a lot of like live stuff within Discord for the DeFi Llama community. What's your take on the kind of different character of the different platforms? Do you find that like certain types of audiences or certain types of content resonate with certain platforms?
Yeah, definitely. So Substack, I haven't noticed any particular pattern. Maybe because there are people who come directly from Substack, but actually no, that's not true. Substack seems to be a lot more because it's newsletter based. It's people who like, they want information quick, or they want like, a lot of them seem to be like more serious investors who are looking for either a summary of the market, because I do a weekly newsletter, or they're looking for like a more professional, like in-depth take on things. Twitter, I don't know. Historically, I would have said Twitter was always like, that was the hardcore crypto users, crypto Twitter. I think that's still true in some sense, but Twitter, the way the algorithm is now, it's much more fragmented. So it's a lot tougher to like build these very niche communities on Twitter. I still think most of the power users are on Twitter. Like we looked at with like the revenue before, the things that trend on Twitter tend to be the same things that are actually being used. And then we've got YouTube is going to be a lot more casual users. So YouTube, like there's a lot more room for beginner content on YouTube. That's just how it is. You can do more in-depth stuff, but if you look at like the stuff that does well on YouTube, usually it's much more for beginner. Also tends to be much more investment focused than on usage focused, if that makes sense. Like I do a lot of content on usage, but if you look at the things that are like highest on YouTube, it'll be like, these are my top 5 coins for, January, or it'll be like, this Bitcoin buy signal just hit. It'll be stuff like that does really well.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, here it is. I actually was really surprised by this because I've been running. I ran this poll last year of crypto users, and it's my audience, so it's like obviously biased towards that. But there's been some really interesting findings. One that surprised me, which is coming out in an upcoming newsletter, is that the YouTube audience, which I always expected was going to be is my screen's not there. It goes. I expected it was going to be the opposite. I expected that if you looked at the net worth of the users and the platform they liked, I expected the YouTube video people would be the poor ones. But it was the exact opposite. Like the YouTube people were the high net worth whales, and I think it might be that investment focus that you were talking about there.
Yeah, I think it could be. Also, I mean, if I think of like, if we talk about a prototypical user, okay, prototypical user, Twitter, there's certainly whales on Twitter, 100%.
Of course.
100%. Although I think a lot of them like are maybe, they're not as laser focused on it at the moment because they've made their money, but there's certainly whales. But if you think about your prototypical user, it's like a guy, like a, male age 18 to 30 who is like, probably works in tech, or maybe he works at some other sort of company and he likes to trade crypto on the side, but he's got like a modest portfolio. The prototypical YouTube crypto user, you do get a lot of people like that still, but definitely skews older. So I can see the demographics on mine, and I think the typical age would be more like 30 to 50. The typical user there is like an engineer or a dentist who likes to trade on the side, who has a lot more money to put in because he's further along in his career, he's established, and he's there for basically one reason. That's because he wants to get some sort of edge on the market.
Yeah, and it makes sense, like if someone like, because there's so many different kinds of content on YouTube, right? Like, because there's like a lot of garbage, but then there's a lot of like really high quality educational stuff. So I think it makes sense that like the number of people that like saw some of the coding tutorials I did and tell me at like various conferences that like I taught them how to use Titanoboa or Ape framework. It's like, okay, yeah, like if you are like seeking out like educational content on YouTube, you're probably going to be like in a really elite tier.
100%, 100%. And I think also, I mean, you know the stereotype about like the day trading dentist. Yeah. So I think I don't want to pick on dentists, right? But I go back to this example because I've actually had times where I said that was like a prototypical audience, and then I actually have had dentists reach out to me, and I don't mean that in like a bad way, but like to me that's a good example. Someone who's clearly intelligent. You have to be intelligent to be in that career. It's a career that if you do it right, especially by the time you're in your 40s, you're probably making pretty good money and you've got a good amount of assets. And it's also a career where you may have the right personality traits to be someone who likes to invest money on the side. And crypto, I think a lot of people, they probably do stocks, but crypto is one avenue someone might go in if they wanted to outperform the market.
Yeah. So, of course, this is not asking for financial advice, because don't ever touch anything like that from YouTube or X or wherever you might be watching. By the way, shout out to the 600 some people watching this on X. Take a second to retweet this, share this. Let's get that to 60,000 if we can before the end of this. That being said, like the market lately has been kind of, in my like it's based on like people I talk to, like sort of like people feel like there's this like sense of uncertainty a little bit, right? Like, because we had the election results in November, and after that, it looked like it was gonna be good for crypto according to the narrative, and then things popped up. Bitcoin's now like around 100K, and since then, it's like people aren't really sure what's coming next, right? Like we have a new president. We're only like a week in. Could go in any number of directions. Like, what is your take for like what do you expect is going to be happening in the like near short term to like next several years with crypto? Obviously the regulatory like overreach seems to be being dismantled, swinging back in the other direction. Like the US is trying to get crypto, like get crypto founders to repatriate back to the US and build and launch things in the US. Like what do you think it's actually going to come of this?
Yeah, so my take is I think people overestimated what would happen in the short term. I mean, I don't know what people thought was going to happen immediately, right? But they overestimate what was going to happen in the short term, and they're underestimating what the long term effect is going to be. So they have this committee now that is supposed to decide within 180 days a regulatory approach across all the different agencies. Cool. So like in that time, I mean, you still have the halving, and you've got ETF flows, and you've got other things that might lead to bullishness, but like, and you've also got the fact that the SEC to most likely loosen up on crypto right away. Maybe you get a strategic Bitcoin reserve and you get like a strong Bitcoin narrative. But to me, the real powerful effect is going to be long term, and I think people this is about underestimating, is once we get a regulatory framework, then founders will feel comfortable investing their career in a crypto business and not having to worry about getting an SEC sued or the industry getting shut down. And I think you're going to see a lot more real businesses. I mean, things like new types of RWAs, new types of financial products that are actually not just the kinds of fun, or depending on who has, not so fun meme type things we've seen so far. And the other thing I think you'll see is that hopefully non-crypto businesses, institutions are more comfortable incorporating these crypto products now that you'll have regulatory clarity. The one thing I think people need to watch out for is, with regulatory clarity, there are going to be some things that are not regulatory compliant, right? I don't think the clarity is going to be you're all free to go, right? There's going to be some things that aren't regulatory compliant. So there may be some losers, but ultimately I think it's going to be a huge net win, because my expectation is that they're going to find that there are, for people who want to be regulatory compliant, there's a way to operate in DeFi while doing so.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Do you think that there should be like so like one of the like features / bugs of our American representative democracy is that we have a changing of the guard in the executive branch every 4 to 8 years, and as a result, like from the outside, people complain that like our government's schizophrenic. What's legal it becomes illegal, what's illegal becomes legal. Do you think that like the fact that like hypothetically a President Warren in 4 years could mean that like it's not actually a safe place to launch a crypto business, and even if you're an American founder and like you like the fact that America's like signaling nicely, you might still want to headquarter yourself in the Cayman Islands or somewhere else around the world because of the threat that like future administration might just wave their magic wand of executive orders and undo everything?
Good question. My take is, assuming they get regulatory clarity quickly, say 180 days like they're supposed to, gets rolled out later this year, I think crypto is going to be at escape velocity by then. It's going to be at a point where people are using apps in their day-to-day lives. It's integrated into traditional finance institutions. You probably have a lot more people that have like 1% to 2% of their portfolio in Bitcoin, and at that point, it's just completely politically untenable to shut it down.
Yeah, I'd agree. Although I'd add that I think it's stable coins that's going to be one of the reasons, the genies that can't be put back in the bottle there.
100%, 100%. Yeah, stable coins. I mean, you're already seeing that in many places, but once the stable coin supply is, say, $1 trillion plus, and you already have a non-trivial amount of short-term US treasuries that are owned by stable coins. I don't know if you have it off the top of your head, but I remember reading some stats, like a couple percentage points of all short-term US treasuries are locked up in stablecoin collateral now. So once you've got that, like 10% of short-term treasuries are backing stablecoins, maybe more. Like I don't think there's a realistic path to them putting that genie back in the bottle.
No, and it's such a fantastic business. I think you're eventually going to see like Starbucks and Target will be having their own stable coins, just because it'll be so easy. Why wouldn't you?
That's a good point. Yeah, actually. And then imagine, like, the second order effects of that. They have their own stable coins. They probably have a rewards program that maybe goes on chain, and there's all the infrastructure around that, wallets, everything. And once that's actually out there, it's not going to be realistic for them to shut it down. I could see a scenario where either maybe even when we get regulatory clarity this year, or in the future, they do come down hard on people who are doing outright scams. But you could argue that maybe they ought to, right? And I mean, I guess the problem is who defines what a scam is. But for people who are outright scamming others, I do think there will be a day of reckoning at some point.
Yeah. I mean, of course, any of these systems are going to be imperfect, but like I think, for example, we could have done a lot better if Zach XBT had been heading the SEC than Gary Gensler for the past 4 years. So, I mean, I think people would be okay with giving him like the baton and saying,
yeah, and I think that's part of
scammers.
the challenge or frustration with the SEC is they're sending Wells notices to Uniswap when you have people who are, Uniswap is they're letting people swap tokens, which I guess maybe they don't like for some reason, but they're trying to be compliant. And then you have people who are just outright rugging projects. And I think that if there was actually a day of reckoning for those people instead of for the good builders, it'd be a much healthier place. And I also think it would have cut down on some of the nonsense we've seen as far as like people launching just blatantly extractive scams if they actually had to worry that they could be held accountable for it at some point.
All right, OX and GMI, if you're listening, I think a morality dashboard on DeFi Llama could be really helpful. Like, rate the morality of a project. Is it a scam or is it not a scam? If anyone could solve it, it's DeFi Llama.
Not a bad idea. You know, there's been certain things like RugDoc and other websites in the past, but yeah, I think unfortunately most of them are not as active anymore because I don't actually know why. Yeah,
Because they're
maybe
not
not.
DeFi Llama. They're not DeFi Llama. It's like it's tough to sustain stuff in the space. So I ask you guys because you say you have a good runway. You talked about it a bit earlier, but let's talk about AI. What is your take on the AI agent intersection with crypto? That seems to be a bit of a narrative.
My take on AI agents is most of the ones that exist now are okay. I don't want to start off negative, but like let's be honest, most of the ones that exist now they're basically toys or jokes, depending on who you ask. Like they're the ones that are just chatbots that are annoying and respond on Twitter. That being said, there's so many developers that have entered that vertical, including a lot of people I know who are talented that come from I can't say what, but like come from very serious DeFi projects who are now building something in AI agents. You're going to have some really cool things launching within the next few months to 6 months.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. More broadly, like, because that is something I can get into like conversations with normies about. Like they are paying attention to AI to various degrees. Although the number of people who have opinions about it, like the older generation who haven't used ChatGPT, is pretty funny. That being said, like I'm sure that like at Thanksgiving or Christmas when you went home to family, they were talking about AI. What do you think is the okay, I mean, we saw everything that happened. NVIDIA, like, what's your like broader take on like AI and the macro economy?
My broader take is well, okay. Here's a couple takes off the top of my head. First is it's gonna do it's gonna distort the relationship between labor and capital because it already is. I think it's starting to in many places because now you'll have a case where a lot of mental labor becomes a lot less valuable. And I think this is, people have talked about this with the need for UBI and everything, but especially even like it's literally it almost feels like every month is a breakthrough where I try some new tool and it's like, oh wow, this can do something I would have had to pay someone to do before. Now I'm seeing some that are like for the first time actually making like legitimately good content. And maybe that'll replace me entirely, but for now I'm using it to produce more than I could have otherwise, right? And so, because there still has to be like the front, distribution side of things. And so I think that's part of it. That's like one broader effect. The other interesting thing, I mean, if you're talking about NVIDIA, I was in did a space recently with a guy. He's high up at a hedge fund. He's Anon. So this is an example of an Anon person on crypto Twitter. But like I know who his docs thing is. He's a classmate, and he's like high up at a hedge fund. He was saying how there was this thesis that the infrastructure GPUs would be the most valuable part of AI, NVIDIA, right? NVIDIA, most valuable company in the world, that they would accrue most of the value. The launch of this new DeepSeek model has called that into question, where some people are now wondering maybe the distribution will be where most of the value accrues. And so you saw a lot of tech stocks actually did well in the wake of that. And so that's another take on how the effect of the economy can be. And I think that there's a way that crypto plays into that, and with these AI agents, because a lot of what these I don't want to call them meme coins, but a lot of them they're using a token to launch an agent and building that community around it and aligning incentives in a certain way. A lot of that has to do with like trying to build out a moat on the front end on the distribution side of things. That's like that's a way that they're distributing them, and maybe it'll turn out that actually ends up being where the value accrues. The other thing that's interesting. I mean, this is now again, I'm kind of thinking off the cuff here, but if you're talking about the intersection between crypto and AI and these agents that are able to do the work of a person, is that you could actually have employees that are fully autonomous. So you could have a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization. You could have a DAO, say, that's truly autonomous, where it's like able to, you have a DAO that is producing analysis about crypto, or writing. Maybe that's a boring example, but it's able to produce, like, professional grade uh, analysis written about crypto. Okay, and then you can imagine there'd be people who would hire that to, like, help draft reports, people who would hire that to write video scripts, all kinds of things. You could have a situation where it's owned by token holders, it's making money by people paying it in stable coins, and that money is held in a smart contract that's controlled by the token holders, and that can then be used to hire other people, maybe hire other agents that the DAO decides want to do other things. And I think we're just in the early stages of that, but like a lot of the vision that people had for what like an autonomous organization can be may actually become possible once you bring some of these AI things. Because most DAOs in the past, they were like, people, there's always the joke that the D in DAO stands for Discord. Like they were basically a Discord group that, would discuss governance votes. But now you could actually have one that was legitimately this like autonomous entity. So I think that's pretty interesting. I know I'm kind of rambling a little, so I'll stop there.
Oh no, it's great. I liked hearing the stream of consciousness about it because I mean, at the end of the day, of course, no one knows what the future is going to hold. So asking you what's going to be the future is like an impossible question. But it's just super interesting to think about because even before AI, even before AI like started to like become the buzzword, you were already seeing this trend where crypto Web3 companies were able to do a lot more with a lot fewer people. Like for example, you mentioned DeFi Llama, which is like, let's compare it to Bloomberg, because Bloomberg does like a ton of like interesting analytics and whatnot, but they have hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of employees, super profitable, right? And DeFi Llama comes along with like a handful of people and is able to essentially, even with before AI was able to replace them with or compete with them, let's just say. Add AI in the mix and like potentially OX and GMI could like just 100x his output and turn DeFi Llama into like something as amazing. Maybe you only have to double your head count. Maybe you go from like 10 or so to 20 people and are still like competing with Bloomberg, and maybe with those extra 10 or 20 employees you get like a huge killer revenue model that like allows you to financially compete with Bloomberg. Like it's like, I mean, I just like I'm super optimistic about where we can go with AI. Yeah, here I go rambling. I think that there will be, of course, be like short-term pain because like there are some people that are going to be like like are gonna have trouble adapting to the new world, and I think it's gonna also just open up a ton of opportunities for people who are able to adapt into this new world.
100%. And I can't speak for what NGMI is going to do with it, but I think he could certainly would be capable of 100xing output. Although, again, I don't know if he would agree or not. One great analogy I heard it was on a podcast. I think it was on My First Million was where I heard it, but the person on there was saying it's like they're dropping 10 billion new people on Earth, and they have the like IQ of a reasonably intelligent person, and they're all willing to work for free. Is basically what's happening.
Yeah, and yeah, I agree. So it's like you get like a ton of extra manpower without having to feed them. So it's like it's pretty cool stuff. Do you think humans are gonna be able to tell the difference between AGI and artificial superintelligence?
That's an interesting one. So like we'll be
Artificial
able to
general
tell the difference between
intelligence?
general intelligence and super intelligence
Yeah, I mean, so I think they're saying that within the next, if it hasn't already happened, I think it's already happened because I think people as a baseline are pretty dumb. So I think that we've already kind of on some level passed artificial general intelligence. But the others talk about like meaningful artificial general intelligence and like what it means. But anyway, like I'm not sure that like once we blow past the barrier and we all agree we've like built AI that is artificially generally intelligent, if there's any real difference between that and artificial superintelligence.
That's
Like
an interesting
if
question.
you have an AI that can already like do most tasks better than humans, like that's essentially like artificial super intelligence, if you ask me, or network a few of them together.
Yeah,
and
well,
you have
I think part of it
ASI.
is like, maybe this is, I don't know how you quantify this, but when can you get to a point where you can, where the ASI can start basically like making discoveries on its own? Or for example, if you're talking about the field of mathematics, when they can start making proofs that have never been done before, like solving unsolved problems. To me, that's like, that would be a one barometer, right? If you get to a point where some of these
Mhm.
unsolved math problems, if you have the ASI can do it, then that would mean super intelligence. If it can't figure that out, then there's still work to be done, right? Um, another barometer would be, of course, when it can improve itself, right? And when it can improve itself. I mean, there's lots of things you could think about, like designing drugs, but pharmaceutical drugs. I mean, but like when these things can actually basically make new discoveries that have never been done before.
Yeah. I think the practical barometer we'll see is that we'll just like start to see a lot of breakthroughs where we're just like, oh wow, I didn't think that was possible. But we're already in this stage, right? Where it's like if you're paying attention to the news, like every few weeks, every few days, there's like a
Yeah,
breakthrough we already thought was impossible
100%.
happening.
That's the thing, and I
So
don't
it's
even
like,
know how much this is AI, but you have the space travel things. You have that, and I know they've been working on this, I think, for a decade, but you have that boom arrow. Did you see this? So it's
no,
the
it's a boom arrow.
Boom is the name of the company. I think 3 days ago now, it's the first U.S. manufactured supersonic civilian passenger jet. So basically, they're building, like, you remember the Concorde? They're building a supersonic jet that'll be intended for trans-Pacific flights, where I guess the economics they figured out works for trans-Pacific flights, and their plane just broke sound barrier for the first time, and it's the first like U.S. manufactured civilian jet to do that. So uh, yeah, so like that's something. It's like, okay, I didn't even know these people were working on this, right? I guess people who were in the aerospace field maybe did, but all of a sudden you're seeing these breakthroughs that I didn't even know were on the radar on a weekly basis.
Yeah, and now it doesn't even like dominate the news cycle. It's 5 minutes in your head as you're scrolling through your feed, and then you're on the next one. So it's kind of a wild time.
100%, 100%.
So who knows? We'll get cold fusion. We'll be mining planetary, spreading to other planets, mining asteroids. It's
That's what
going to
I
be an
say.
exciting decade.
I was saying maybe people talk about the singularity. You know, maybe we're already in that dip where things are starting to accelerate. It's not to the point yet where it's like every day, right? It's not to the point yet where it's like you in a month you barely recognize things. But maybe we're already in that point where things are starting to accelerate faster and faster.
Is it going to be a good thing for crypto, in your opinion?
It should be. Crypto's pretty good at capturing value from different narratives.
All right, that's good. So then in that case, like obviously you can't predict the future, but like what's got you excited about crypto for the next few years?
Next few years, I mean, I do think the intersection with AI is exciting simply because you're going to see it used in a lot of ways. I'd be really excited to see. This is going to maybe it'll sound exciting to you. I'm really excited to see stablecoins and RWAs go mainstream. And I think
Hmm.
I never would be excited about someone else being harmed. But you've already seen, for example, like money transmitters are actually being affected by stablecoins in a meaningful way, like Western Union. I think you're going to see a lot more traditional finance start to be disrupted by crypto. There's going to be many that are able to incorporate crypto and work with it. Like, don't get me wrong, but you're going to start to see them being disrupted. And to me, it is exciting to, after so many years of being kind of pushed to the side and in many ways looked down on, the industry I'm talking about, not myself, um, to actually see like crypto come into its own and start to establish itself as an important part of the financial system.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Is there any other like hot takes you want to get off your chest?
Hot takes. I feel like I've gotten a few hot takes off my chest on this call. Um, no, is there one I should have? I should have. Okay.
No, no, I just it's just so awesome to get a chance to like
Yeah.
pick your brain and have
Here's
this chat
a
with
hot
you.
take.
So
Here's a
while
hot
I have
take
this
I can give you.
opportunity, I don't.
I'm less convinced of this than I used to be, but I think there's still a chance that crypto goes to say $10 trillion market cap in the next few years, becomes integrated into aspects of our daily lives, but we never get a retail mania quite on the scale of 2021 again.
I can see that. I mean, I think at some level it's happening. All the retail is meme coins, which is, it is what it is. Um, and you're seeing all this like traction starting to play out, in my opinion, like in terms of ETFs and like stable coins, but that's not a retail phenomenon at all. So yeah, it might be the
It could
suitor
be,
here,
yeah. I mean,
and the retail
or it
just
could be
doesn't
like,
care.
think about how the tech sector has performed over the past 10 or 15 years, right? But have you ever had, like, I guess in 2021 maybe, but like my impression is that you haven't quite had the same like frenzy that you had in the tech bubble, in the sense of like, well, you had SPACs, I guess, but like say 2021 was like the first time you had the same frenzy as you had in the dot-com bubble. You like that took 20 years, right? So it wouldn't shock me if like we actually end up going much higher without having that same sort of retail mania, because there's other things people can gamble on too. They don't necessarily have to be gambling on crypto.
Yeah. That being said, we'll have to see what happens because like I think we will at some point see like a giant pump. And at some point it's gonna get retail attention, and at some point retail's gonna get it. At some point my mom's gonna ask me about buying more Ethereum. She has a quarter of an Ethereum or something like that, from 2020, which is still not it's still not recovered, but she's predictably always been the top signal. So as soon as she like says, "Oh, I just saw on the news that Bitcoin's doing well, how can I buy some?" I promised everyone that I'm going to tell everyone, and that's their cue to sell off.
Harsh but true.
um, no, that's a good take. I hope that retail arrives in some way. I hope they arrive in a way where they're not speculating. I hope they arrive in a way where they're like building or doing something interesting in the space. Because I think that that's where like the most opportunity is the people who just like yourself come and add value. And it's so rewarding if you do choose to do it. And if you're doing something of value, I think you can kind of better inoculate yourself against the various market cycles. But that being said, I also know that like I've seen enough cycles play out that retail's not very good at that. So yeah, I don't know, but I could see this being the cycle where retail comes in, but they come in unknowing. They just come in because they're using apps and crypto's powering in the back
That's
end.
what I mean. Or they're buying Bitcoin ETFs, or they're buying some other sort of crypto ETF, or maybe they're buying it through some mechanism that doesn't require an ETF. But all I'm saying is there's no law that says that there has to be like progressively bigger retail manias. You could even have a situation like consider that if it's not bigger, it's close. Like Nvidia having a higher market cap than the entire sector, right? That doesn't require like tens of thousands of people who have like Patrick.nvda is their username, and they're like, they spend their all day tweeting about Nvidia and like trashing people who say that they like other GPUs better, like which you have people still, and especially in the past, like there's people who do that with crypto. They spend all day like trashing people who don't like a certain token. There's no law that says like that's what the industry has to be. There's no law of nature. There could be easily a situation where things go much higher, but you don't have like that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I don't know enough about the meme coin space. Has anyone created an Nvidia meme coin? Like I could actually see that being
Yeah,
something that plays
I'm
out
sure
where
they
people
have.
just create.
I bet you there's
I'm
a
sure they
bunch.
have. If you've thought of it at this point, if you could think of it, I'm sure it exists. It's a good take. It's a good take, man. Any other hot takes?
No, I think that's all the hot takes. Yeah, I'm looking right now. There's like, it looks like there's dozens of Nvidia meme coins. Most of them worth
Of
nothing.
course.
Like $20 market cap, $30 market cap. Yeah.
Jeez, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. All right. I've definitely chewed up enough of your time. I know you have exciting plans to deal with your state's tax agency.
Yeah. It's going to be a great, glorious afternoon.
No, that is something that is definitely due for disruption. And AI, anything could do better.
100%. I mean, I think that's, that shows, we'll go in a sec, but like we talk about things accelerating, is you go back and look at something like the websites you have to, I'm actually dealing with multiple states at the moment, but one of them is sorted out. You go to these states tax websites and it's like, oh wow, like this feels really old. It feels really antiquated now. And in many cases, you can look at the provider, right? It's all public. You can look at the provider and see who's building it and be like, oh, like, that makes sense. Like this company, this software was probably built 15 to 20 years ago. And it, in some ways it does what it's meant to, but in other ways it feels like very, very antiquated.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's any nation that's kind of solved this. Like, one of the quintessential examples, unfortunately, that came up in the past few days, the FAA. The FAA's like systems are deliberately antiquated because they want to be incredibly conservative in how they introduce new technology, because they know if it's, they've tested whatever systems they have, which look like, they were looks like some of those like old pixel art type games, but they know that it works. They've stress tested a million times, and they know that if they like upgraded to Windows XP, they'd have to do a update at the time when it's critical. So they know that the software they have is not going to do that, but it's archaic and ancient. So I don't know what the solution is. I hope someone figures it out. I'm sure they're smarter than me. I hope it's artificial intelligence or super intelligence maybe that can do it.
100%, 100%.
Patrick, it's been an absolute pleasure. We have to have you on more often, just because you're an amazing guy. You do great stuff in the space. You have amazing takes. You're gonna need some time to collect your hot takes, but anytime you got them, we'd be more than happy to have you on the stream to chat about.
Yeah, happy to do that. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. So if you are watching this, just a moment to give a shout out to our sponsors, Protocol FX. You can click this QR code in the upper left-hand corner. They are doing some amazing work with stablecoins, FXUSD. Make sure to take a minute to subscribe to Leviathan. Make sure that you hit us on Telegram, where we got our Web3 news aggregator powered by people like you. We got a lot of cool stuff coming down the pipeline. Follow us on X. Where should people find you, Patrick?
Sorry, I had to unmute for a sec. They can find me on YouTube, Dynamo DeFi, Substack, dynamodefi.substack.com, or on Twitter at Dynamo_Patrick.
Excellent. All right, Squids, it's been a pleasure. This has been another Llama Party. It's been a successful one. It is January 31st, and we will catch you all on the next tide.